It was a great and glorious time because nothing was sacred. Everything was up for grabs. There wasn't a question you couldn't ask. There was not an idea you couldn't play with.
I mean, I think life was had more free-form energy at that time.
Anything was possible. We stopped a war. We changed the world, you know?
I mean, believing in that one person or one voice could change the world, I mean, that's how I felt as a person, so certainly it made sense to speak that in my artistic voice. And hair was certainly the right place for me to go at that moment.
But I was really trying to just make a living to support my family. And I thought, well, let me just set a musical to music. And I'd been given an introduction to Nat Shapiro, who was a publisher and a publicist. And I told Nat that. I said, I want to write musicals. And he called me up and said, there's these two guys who have a musical, and they need a composer. So I said, fine, introduce me. And when I met Jerry and Jim, they took me down to the village to look at hippies, you know. And I looked at them. I'd seen hippies. That was not a big deal. Jerry had caught Joe Papp on the train up to, he was teaching up there. And he'd given him the script, and Joe said, yeah, where's the music? And they didn't have them. They said, well, we're working on that. And then so after I wrote about 7 or 8 tunes, they said, well, let's go see Joe. And they didn't know that, I mean, they were good. Jim is a great singer, and Jerry's a great singer. But they didn't know the tune. So the first time, Joe just listened to me sing. But then Joe dropped it. And we went around to Broadway and played it to Merrick and all those guys, and they weren't interested at all. Merrick said, hippies? No. So Jerry said to Jim, why don't you go back to Joe and see if he changed his mind? And Jim did, and Joe said, let me hear it again. And by that time, they knew the songs, and they were good performers. So he said, okay, I'll do it. Jerry and Jim were obsessed. There was nothing else, really, that concerned them except writing the show and fixing. I watched them work here over a month, at least, more maybe. And so you see, certain days it looks pretty good, some days it looks like hell. But the first night that we performed for an audience was basically a disaster. I was playing the piano up in a thing above the stage, and I watched the show from there and playing it. It just didn't work at all. Then the next night, it started to work around Frank Mills. The audience started to respond. And the third night, it really worked. I don't think it was taken too seriously, but Clive Barnes gave it a very nice review. Downtown. I think some of them were not good at all, but it didn't matter. People came to it. It was full. We ran for 6 weeks, and it was full. But Jerry and Jim were determined to get to Broadway. I didn't even know what Broadway was, really, particularly, as opposed to Joe Papp. It was all theater to me. Well, then it went to Broadway. And on opening night, we had a doctor, bishop, who gave them all shots, like vitamin shots.
B12 or something?
And that sort of blanked them out for the first act, but it still worked.
So they weren't the Dr. Feelgood shots of the 60s when pepped you up?
They were the feel-good shots.
They were?
Yeah, me and Julie Aronell and one other person didn't take them. I wasn't going to get shot up on opening night, but the whole cast did.
So you're probably the only reason that the tempos were right. They might have been much slower or much faster, you know?
Well, anything could happen. So I know they made a big deal about this is the end of the era, but you can't write Hair twice. You know, Hair was just that particular 1960s youth, you know, it was a wonderful time really in America. The wonderful thing about Hair that rang bells with me was that Jerry and Jim definitely wanted a mixed cast. And, you know, to do a musical without any black people in it would be very wrong for me. Because I love African music, and I love in fact, it was black people that got me into music. Duke Ellington and the boogie woogie people, all those, the 40s type of music. All those people were my heroes, those jazz guys. But Broadway became more of a nuisance than was worth it. So I stopped writing for Broadway. But, I mean, if a person asked me tomorrow to write a Broadway show, I'd do it.
The last time I did a play in New York before the Gin Game was Timothy Mason's The Fiery Furnace, and it was at the Lucille Lortel down in the Village, and everybody said, "Oh, you're doing an off-Broadway show? Like, well, you're in the kitchen now or something? Or you're scrubbing floors?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's a good play, and it's in New York City. What difference does it make what the location is? I'm in New York doing a play."